What up, what up, what up, what up, world? It's another Wandering Talks. And today I guess this was the last full week of February here. And it shows because there's, a little bit of snow on the ground. It is mostly melted at this point. But I'm trying to see where I can get the sun out y'all's eye because, that thing is bright. There we go. Okay, cool. So, we had ourselves another snow day this past week, and, it's weird how life just coincides sometimes. I just finished reading, Jurassic Park last week, and first off, that book is scary as hell. I know the movie was like this Steven Spielberg style adventure where there's kids out thwarting velociraptors in a very funny and comical way, and as a 90s kid I really love that. But when you read the book and you dive into what Michael Crichton was trying to say, he had a lot to say about genetic engineering, about science, and about chaos theory. Oh, such a cool phrase, right? I heard of chaos theory from this movie actually called Chaos Theory starring Ryan Reynolds quite a ways ago, and I didn't really understand it. I don't know if it's something that can truly be understood, or is it kind of just this thing that exists, because that's kind of like what chaos theory says. And the reason that it ties in with kind of everything right now is, one, in Jurassic Park, the movie, the character Dr. Ian Malcolm, who's played by the ever-charming Jeff Goldblum. I mean, who doesn't want to be a Jeff Goldblum type? Let's be real, some serious masculinity goals right there. But he's played by that, and, in the movie, he's, super charming and everything else. But in the book, he's like a really deeply philosophical scientist and mathematician, and has quite a bit to say about John Hammond's park, where he essentially he didn't create a zoo, he created life and expected life to operate in this system. And Ian Malcolm's character the whole time is basically hey, you can't predict complex systems. It's just physically impossible. I told you that your park would fail, and now you got me here on this weekend trying to convince me that your park is great. And when your park fails, do not be surprised, because I told you that you cannot predict complex systems. And that's, in summary, what chaos theory is a theory that states there are always going to be unpredictable elements in systems that exist in nature. And no matter how many data points, how many measurements, how many calculations we might be able to create, we can never truly predict what is going to happen next for a complex system. And why this ties into today and this week, the weather. The weather is the most recognizable, complex, unpredictable system that we have experience as humans, and all humans experience weather. No matter where you are, no matter what you do, you are part of a climate. So it's a universal force that we can have really measured probabilities and possibilities, but we can never accurately say this is going to happen according to the weather, because there's so many micro elements that we don't have factors or understanding for. And it's those micro elements that essentially make the whole thing different. And of course, the micro elements might not affect the first attempt, the second attempt, the 15th attempt, but at some point in time, it's the little things that are going to cause your predictions to fail, but ultimately push you into something new. So that's our intro, right? Wow, big intro. What I'm thinking about after I read Chaos Theory and read Jurassic Park and experienced a midday snow day Wednesday and Thursday where, I got called out of work and all of a sudden had to do something different with my time and energy. It's that thing in North Carolina or just anywhere when you're watching snow on the horizon before it arrives in your location. You know, everybody's updating Weather Channel reports, and they're all saying like, oh yeah, we might get wintry mix here, we might get 1 to 2 inches, we might be this. And then the weather actually happens, and it's not that at all. And you just go, oh dang, that's so interesting. We thought we had this under control, but we really didn't. We had the high level stuff accounted for, but it was those little things that we can never fully understand. And then when you think about the system of life and the process of living, not just biological living, but also like philosophical living, it is often those little things that make the biggest differences in our world. It's, I think we have a tendency to respond very well to high level change. Perfect example, the United States election. It might be taking us some time to respond to things, but it's kind of so high level and so out of our power that we have no choice but to like go with it. That's just how it is going to be. But then when you look at like the micro level, and it's like, man, what might really throw me off may not be this presidential decree, but it may be me getting hit with my fuel is low in my car and payday's not till Friday and I got rent due the next day. And it's that little thing that really, really, really warps you and changes your whole perspective on your day. I don't know if that's the best example of things, but it's kind of a peek into what I'm considering this week is how predictable is unpredictability. Ian Malcolm made this really great speech in the book that basically said like, hey, look, like 400 years ago, scientists decided to stop incorporating things that they could not measure and could not control in science, and then just kept moving forward. And for 400 years, we've never gone back and questioned like, hey, are we overlooking something? We're basing everything on predictable scales and values. What about the unpredictability of life? And if I could tell you anything from my life, I've learned that unpredictability is sometimes the X factor that will like really push you in a new direction. You need randomness in order to break up the mundane. I think last time I talked about tradition and non-traditional. Well, it's sometimes like knowing that there's something else out there that allows you to start considering breaking from tradition. It's the random sequence of genes that led to mutations, and then mutations led to diversity of life across this planet. It's sometimes you accidentally losing your passport and wallet in a foreign nation, and then all of a sudden having to find your way back home on a brand new adventure. And yet, those little unpredictable moments and random instances where we never could have seen something coming shows us what life really is. It is inherently chaotic. And order, all the order that we have is, I feel, our human need to have some semblance of control over our lives. Because honestly, humans for thousands and thousands and thousands of years had no sense of control over their lives that we have now. They couldn't comprehend what was happening. It was so outside of their rational understanding that it was just a matter of, I am just a pawn of fate. And like, what changed? What made it so that we don't feel like pawns of fate anymore? Sometimes we do, But more often than not, especially in like the Western world, we have this strong sense of individuality that I can control my destiny and my fate. And then life somehow all the time comes around and reminds you by throwing you things that you didn't know were going to happen to you. And I don't know, like, how much control do you really have? I think the secret is not a lot. And I think the secret behind that secret is accepting that as the norm. Accepting that, hey, there is so much more that I'm not going to have a hand on and not going to be able to act upon or use my powers on. But there are going to be a few things, small things, that I can have a major influence and impact on if I use my skills and gifts accordingly. Instead of me trying to tackle things that are impossible for me to tackle, why don't I direct my energy to the tangible things? And then this circles all the way into this notion I've been thinking about of community. I know I talked about it earlier, but we have so much influence in the communities that are local and present to us. And local can also mean digital if you're like an active member of a digital community, but I really, really, really stress the importance of a local in-person community if possible. And it's by working with these small elements, small quote unquote elements, that allow us to feel some sense of security, acceptance, and understanding in our world. Because again, most of this is out of our control. Most of this is chaotic. Most of this, just like I almost slipped, most of this is just, you can try your best, something might just come around and get you. And that's an okay way to live. I think it's more than okay. I think it's a beautiful way to live. I think it's a natural way to accept. That's what that is. Somebody went sledding right here. You see? Somebody hit a sled all the way down there. I was like, why does that patch of leaves look like that? Again, it's just, oh boy. This entry is writing itself as I'm walking this path. I think it's just, as I start to summarize and wrap this up, I think that we have to go back to embracing chaos, embracing the unknowable, the random, the disordered, the thing that I can't put my finger on, but know it's going to eventually pop up. And I think we just need to have a baseline understanding of what could be possible in the realm of all possibilities, both the predicted and not known. Because again, like, you might not be able to prepare for the full unpredictable. Like, if I know the ground is slick and wet, maybe I can just walk a little bit slower, and I might hit a patch of ground that might slick me up, but if I'm walking slower, I might be able to keep my balance better. And what are other ways that we can keep our balance when the world and life is a slippery slope? It's, again, embracing what we can control, accepting that there's going to be so much more that we can't, and finding a way to live in harmony between both of those realities. And that harmony looks different for a lot of us, but it all first begins with acknowledging and accepting that life is inherently chaotic. That nature, what we call life, is one of the most complex systems that exist in our world. And it's not a system that we can know. And that's okay. Because honestly, if we figured out all the systems and really knew how life worked, one, I think a lot of us wouldn't want to live it. Because they'd be like, oh my God, this is too much. Or two, it would not be interesting. It might be entertaining. It might be fun. It might be this, but I don't know if I personally would find an interest in life if I knew exactly how everything worked. Isn't it sometimes fun to to discover a thing that you don't know what it's going to do. And you just kind of have to like let it do its thing. And if it does its thing, you'll eventually understand it somewhat. But there's something about the element of magic and mystery and intrigue that is also very human. Because again, even before we had our sciences, we had our belief systems, we had our faiths, we had our mysticism and mythology. And I think like in this hyper vigilant, hyper technological world, it might be good to go back to those old order understandings. Even if just to like take a glance at that's how we used to be. This is who we are now. The system hasn't changed, but maybe we can. And that's chaos theory.